let's start our conversation with our global update. We'll start from Gaza, looking at the latest development as regards the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas, and how to take advantage of this season to draw advocacy for peace. You know, the world needs peace. According to Pope Francis, when he was delivering his Easter message yesterday, he said that war is an absurdity and there's a need for the world to embrace peace. To shed more light on this, we are being joined by our analyst. We have Dr. Idahosa Osamhanze, who joins us all the way from Morocco. Glad you have you join us.
Good morning, Femi. I am not joining from Morocco. I'm actually joining from Lagos.
Great. Glad to know you're back.
Yeah.
All right, so let's start the conversation by looking at the sensitivity of a period like this. I'm going to start with the Easter message delivered by Pope Francis, where he called for peace. He said, war is an absurdity. Now, at a time like this that we're looking at the significance of Easter celebration, which is love and the sacrifice of our Savior, how do you make or utilize this period to sue for peace globally, and what should be the narrative looking at the latest trend in Gaza, the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas?
Well, for me, it's quite unfortunate that we are celebrating a season like Easter, and so many people has actually lost the sense of the meaning of what Easter means to us, especially to the Christian faithful. And part of the challenge that the globe is facing today is actually this missing link between the ceremony of Easter and what Easter actually represents. And I think that is what the Pope Francis tried to also speak to, which is, of course, embracing the Prince of Peace, who actually gave himself to save the world from crisis, to save the world from sin, and from every unrighteousness. And in the list of the world, every act of war is a product of sin and unrighteousness. And that is actually what Jesus came to save the world from. And until the world embraces the Prince of Peace, it will be very, very difficult for the world to find peace.
All right, even as it is Easter season, but there is still war ongoing between Israel and Hamas. So the negotiators between Israel and Hamas have tried to bring them to the table. But Israel is negotiating the release of some of the hostages held by Hamas. And the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, has said that force and, of course, talks will be applied in order to get this. But in the meantime, Hamas has refused to come to the table, waiting for a new deal offered by Israel. How do you see this playing out at the end of the day? Do you foresee a situation where the talks for peace does not hold and then the war continues to escalate?
Well, I think the biggest problem here really is the fact that the hypocrisies that we find in the global space today. And I think that is the real problem in Israel, why we have not been able to actually get to the root and the heart of peace in that region in Palestine. Now, we need to look at the origin and of this crisis. Hamas breaking through the border to kill about 1,200 Israelis and hold about 250 of them hostage without any provocation. And now Israel is responding and the world is crying and say, oh, they want to wipe out the Palestinians. This is the real problem because, like they say, when there is injustice anywhere, it becomes a threat to justice everywhere. But it's not to say that these things cannot be ended. The hostility from these terrorists, the world must come together and agree to put an end to terrorism. And I know that this is possible. All these deviant elements that are creating crises all across the globe and making the globe very, very difficult for people to live in, we must put aside the sentiment of religion, put aside sentiments of ethnicity and race, and deal with this issue frontally and flush out these evil elements that is creating so much unhappiness and hatred around it.
In the course of this war, several civilian casualties have been recorded. And when it's a situation when two elephants fight, it is the grass that suffers. Now, how will you assess the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and what should be done to ensure that this crisis is being minimized, if not totally eradicated? now that the world is calling for help, and Gaza is also in their need of humanitarian assistance?
Yeah, but that is what I'm saying. It's important that while we are also looking at pushing peace, it should not be peace at all costs, that you are having criminal elements using human beings, innocent human beings as human shield, and then causing evil. And then, of course, they now begin to appeal to the sense of emotion that human beings are being killed. This also requires that even the people in the Gaza Strip who are not part of this terrorist gang must be able to expose these people and not allow them to use them as shield, because this is fundamental. These people are living among them and they know who they are. And I think that is where the real issues are, that the whole world must come together and every people must understand that when wars come, of course, therefore, you must have casualties. And that is what you're seeing right now. Now, Israel has opened some frontiers for humanitarian aids to come. Yeah, but that will not end until justice is meted out. And that is to say, those terrorist elements release those hostages that are being held, and then let that region know peace for good.
So for Israel and for Qatar and Egypt mediating peace between Israel and Gaza, what do you think they should do at this point in time where neither party seems to be giving conditions necessary for the peace to happen?
Yeah, that's a point I'm trying to make. You see, for you to get to the root of this peace, you can't just call people to table and say you want to negotiate. What are you negotiating? Allow Israel, who has lost some people, and then having their citizen held hostage, to just forget those 250 people, and then, of course, come to the table and say, okay, there's no more. So what is the real reason? Why did the reprisal attack came? The reprisal attack came because these people came without provocation, broke through the borders, killed some people, and took some people hostage. So the beginning of peace actually could be that these mediators should find a way to prevail on the Hamas to release the hostages that they are holding, and that is the shortest route to peace.
You know, it's a special day. Christians all over the world are celebrating the resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ. Just like the Pope, just like Pope Francis has set the pace. What will you expect religious leaders to do at a time like this? And the concern is, will their advocacy make any relevance on the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas, and looking at the situation in Gaza? Is there anything religious leaders can do at a special day like this, at a special season like this, to help the situation over there?
A while ago, while ministering in our church here, I gave the indication that it is unfortunate that we celebrate so much of Easter, but we lose the meaning of the concept of Easter, which is, of course, Christ coming humbly to take the form of man so that he can save man from sin, from unrighteousness. Now, when you look at the tenets of all religions across the globe, whether it is Islam, whether it's Christianity, whether it is Buddhism, whether it's Hinduism, or African traditional religion, every religion in the world preaches peace. Now, if we are living in a world that is bereft of so much peace, it does say that the religions of the world has actually failed to live out their tenets. And I think these are the crises that we have to really confront. So for me, I think it's a time for religious leaders to actually reinvent themselves and ensure that we can actually preach peace, which is the real fulcrum that holds these religions in place. So if the leaders are not able to preach and promote peace, then something definitely is wrong. Because you see, all across the globe, all these people that are fighting this war, they are called religious extremists. And they are having people and leaders behind them who are urging on to continue to kill against the tenets of their faith. And I think this is where we need to really see how the religious leaders all across the globe, whether they are Christians, whether they are Muslim, Hindus, or Buddhists, should live by the tenet of the religion and let people really get to that point of conversion, of accepting religion, which is a matter of faith, to believe what the religion offers, that killing is anathema to all the religion in the world, even including Islam.
Now, if we go over to Russia and Ukraine, where there's another war ongoing, which has been for about 2 years, we'll find a similar situation where neither party wants really to present what is needed for the end of the war. Instead, in the case of Russia and Ukraine, we have Russia calling for extradition of Ukraine's security heads. What do you make of the situation?
Well, the situation in Russia and Ukraine today is actually getting worse and worse by the day, and this is because I said some time ago in the studio that because the big brothers have refused to play the big brother role to actually bring peace to that region. What we see playing out today is the fact that the play of ego from both ends. And recently you saw the terrorist attack on Russia. And now Russia is calling that the leader of those attacks be surrendered. And of course, you know, they're in a state of war. There's no way Ukraine is going to surrender this. And what is left for Russia is either to use force to get these things out. And I think to that extent, I agree with Donald Trump in one of his recent interview with Tucker Carlson, where he says that the greatest threat in the world today is actually not the threat of climate change, it's actually the threat of the nuclear war, which is brewing and is looming very large. And the world need to really understand that this can happen. And because like Donald Trump says, Russia has the capacity, and so many countries like China also has capacity to actually leverage the world. And third world war can be something that will be catastrophic. And I feel that world leaders should come together and not take side in the issues between Russia and Ukraine and see how permanent peace can come to that region also.
Now, on Sunday, the Israeli Prime Minister insisted that he's going to maintain military pressure on Hamas while being open to talks and all that. How will you describe this tactics on the part of the Israeli Prime Minister? Is it counterproductive, or do you think it's also going to help the situation now that war leaders are calling for ceasefire?
You know, the last time we were having this same conversation on the show, and I said to you, assuming you have two children that are fighting, the younger and the older seems to have more strength, will you allow the older to fold hand, then allow a knife in the hand of the younger? Because that's not the sure way to peace. And I think that's what Netanyahu is saying. If the Hamas are not accepting peace terms and they don't want to come to the table for negotiation, and then you are asking Israel to drop arms, it becomes very, very difficult. Yeah, because in international relations, self-defense is a principle that is held by the whole world. So if you say, oh, drop warfare, and these other parties are not dropping, they are doing damage and danger to you, that becomes really very critical. And that is why I'm saying, really, the problem here is really not Israel, so to speak. The problem is actually the fact that the world is saying, oh, saying because there's so much casualty on the side of the Hamas, and say, oh, Israel, stop. So, but the real people who are the perpetrator, nobody seems to be having a hold on them or control over what they do or how they respond. So this is the challenge. So Israel had to be on its guard while also expecting that peace prevails soon.
On the issue of Russia requesting for extradition of Ukraine's security service chief, now, for some of the issues that have been raised, do you see where the International Crime Court would be holding some countries, regardless of the war ongoing, to account for some of the things that have been perpetrated in the course of war?
Well, I don't think the International Court of Justice, which of course is an arm of the United Nations, would really have so much to do with this particular issue, except that you have changed the government in Russia, for example, and maybe a more liberal and moderate leader coming to Russia and not Putin. Then, of course, you'll be thinking that, okay, he may surrender Putin to be arrested, to be tried where. So that's the real issue. So you see, you are dealing with world power. So what is here is the fact that this will happen, and because it's happening here between great powers, so consequences may be low, except that they are conquered. Now, conquering Russia is what, of course, the world has to look at, and that is the only way you can be looking at ICJ having the kind of effrontery to say they want to summon Putin or whoever for a war crime. Now, what also this means is the fact that, you see, because the war between Russia and Ukraine is between two unequals. And I know that Russia should have expected that these kind of things will happen. Because if I don't have the strength and the mind to confront you in a face-to-face military battle, I can also use other means. So, and that's why terrorism is usually referred to in science of warfare as asymmetrical, because you really don't know where the enemies are hiding, and they're looking at a way to see how to pull down your strength, and then, of course, deliver their people from the grip of war. So for me, I think that that call by Putin is not something that is feasible, and it's not something that Ukraine will readily and willingly do because of the level of damage too that Russia has caused in the Ukraine. Yeah, but also it's both parties must begin to look out for ways to global peace. And the issue here, they are also very, very straightforward. And this is where, of course, we really need to call on NATO to see and prevail on these issues. And that simple step to peace will just be fine. No need to fly egg. Yes, we know that Ukraine is a sovereign nation. He wants to join NATO. And of course, because of the situation in that terrain, Russia is resisting that attempt for Ukraine to join. So I think what NATO should do, or NATO nations should do, is to actually say, step down these issues and let's get to harmonize and a level of peace and negotiation. Then, of course, if it becomes expedient and necessary, then you can begin to talk about that alliance between Russia and Ukraine. Of course, in the US also, you had those issues during the Cold War of Russia trying to penetrate some South American countries to be able to have an eye on what America is doing. But of course, we saw America also resisted it. But this really didn't lead to any form of war. And that's where we really need to see how we can talk about peace, especially using the occasion of Easter and then the celebration of the sacrifice of the great prophet Muhammad that is on his way.
Earlier, you talked about the possibility of a third world war brewing, and Vladimir Putin has occasionally threatened the use of nuclear weapons. But do you see it as a threat, knowing very well that Russia too would also be hit with the consequences of using nuclear weapon?
Well, I don't see it as a threat. You see, it's not a mere threat. It's something that the world needs to take very seriously. And I think that is the point that Donald Trump was making in that interview that he gave, and that it is necessary for us to handle this thing with care before it blows into full-scale war. If history is anything to go by, you remember when, of course, American had made the hydrogen bomb in 1946-48, and the Second World War was ongoing. And when the Pearl Harbor was attacked by the enemy forces, America had no option but to use the hydrogen bomb on Nagasaki and Hiroshima that brought that war to an end. And the consequences of those wars, even to today in the region of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, is still being felt, even for children that are being born today because of the destruction that came upon that city. So I don't want the world to see this as a threat, because it's already well established that Russia has the nuclear capability. And if they are pushed to the wall by the West, they may not have another option but to use what they have to defend themselves. But that will create a situation that is called in international relations mutual assured destruction, and that will not be good for the globe.
Now, let's talk about global terrorism and the dimension it has added to the war. You're aware of the recent mass shooting that happened in Russia, where about 144 people died. And then IC has also claimed responsibility for that attack. Don't you think that this is also adding another dimension to the ongoing war, making it complicated? And then what should be the way forward when it comes to tackling global terrorism?
The only alternative to war is peace. And that is what it is. And that is the point I made earlier. This is an asymmetrical war. And in asymmetrical war, you are not having two sides that is equal in strength fighting. All you have is one side that has known. What the weaker part does is to see how they can hide and attack you from the behind and cause some casualty and strike fears and terror in your heart. That's why it's called terrorism. So what these people are doing is to tell Russia that, oh, we are strong and we have a network, we have collaborations, And this is the real issues. And what this will mean is that if Russia insists that these people are not surrendered, you see, it is possible for Russia to actually be able to tell by satellite and all their technology where these people actually live. And if they are living in the midst of people, God forbid, you see a reprisal attack coming from Russia, and that could be very, very devastating for the whole of Ukraine. So these are issues that why, of course, for me, negotiating peace at this point is the real answer to the warfare that is ongoing and raging across the globe. We must find, the world must find a way to nip in the bud these terrorist threats globally. There are some leaders across the globe who are funding and empowering terrorists for obvious reasons. And these people, the world should really look at them and see how to put an end to terrorism, because it's not good for anybody. And I don't think the world is even enjoying it as it is right now.
So far, there have been casualties on both sides, whichever country is fighting, whether it is for Ukraine or Russia, or for Hamas or Israel. At this point in time, do you see it as it has gone too far? The point of it's gotten to the point of no return.
Well, it's huge. No thanks to the invention of guns, gunpowder. Now we have atomic bomb, talking about hydrogen bomb, and nuclear facilities are built all across the globe. This is what the human intelligence has brought us, and it's come with a whole lot of its trouble which the world currently face. And as long as globally people continue to produce this weapon of mass destruction, then of course an end may not necessarily be in sight. People who have tasted war don't want to get off it, especially understanding that they are protected, and then those who are dying really are not their relative, and their children don't fight in those wars. And this is where, for me, that we need to get to that point, like Thomas Hobbes called it, in the state of nature, where life was so brutish because of the competitions and the competitiveness of the human race at that time. And then they came to a reasoned consideration, and then the state was established to mediate between these individuals who were at each other's neck. And I think that point is where we should get to at this point. People need to be more intelligent. We need a lot of education, especially for young people who are coming up, to tell them the terribleness of what war is like. And I think one example that the world can actually borrow a leaf from is what Paul Kagame has been able to do with the Rwanda Memorial, where, of course, every year people are made to look at what actually happened in the war situation, the number of people that died, and then, of course, to use the opportunity to preach a global peace. And I think those are the kind of things that the world needs at this point. We need to talk more peace rather than war. And then, of course, those things that are aiding war, we must find a way to put an end to it, and maybe delegitimize them if it is possible. And then, of course, we can be able to interact and interface. Yeah, but fundamentally speaking, the biggest challenge here is the problem of justice. And where there is no justice, you cannot talk about peace.
All right, looking at the latest development, the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas, Russia and Ukraine. You talk about the one in Yemen as well, and, talk about pockets of crisis across the world. What are the lessons for world leaders, looking at the absurdity that this has brought to the whole world? What are some of the lessons for world leaders and nations need to imbibe? Looking at the development and what has happened with these wars ongoing, what should be the narrative for world leaders and lessons for nations across the globe?
Well, I think for me, the leaders all across the globe should understand, number one, that there's a extent to which that you can push even a goat, that if you push a goat and it gets to the wall, likely it will be forced to bite, even if it naturally will not bite. That is to say that every leader that is elected whichever country should also realize the need to cater for the interest of all. And that is very fundamental. And this is where the whole idea of crisis and conflict is all originating from. When you have leadership who are not taking everybody as one, and then you are ruling for the interest of your own little group. Yes, we know politics is about interest, but we think that that interest must not be overstretched to the advantage of those who are in the margin or in the minorities. So we must use power responsibly. We must use our words responsibly. We must use our knowledge responsibly, such a way that we also have to make room for those who have no power, those who have no wealth, and those who have no knowledge.
Quickly, let's go over to Yemen, where the Yemen's Houthi militia have issued 100 riyal coins in replacement of the 100 riyal banknotes, which is worn out. Now, what do you think will be the implication of this on the economy and even on the ongoing civil war in Yemen?
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to play out, really. Who is going to use the coin? You know, when an opposition leader is producing his own money, how acceptable that would be to the generality of people will just be unthinkable, really. But I think, yeah, what it is the fact that it will only instigate more hostility, as, of course, the legitimate leaders are saying that, of course, this is actually an affront and they will go ahead to fight it. So it will only worsen the situation in Yemen as it is at the moment. And I think it's not different from what other things that people are talking about, to seek how to come to the round table to judge rather than war. So I think that is where I want to put it. So the effort to establish a new state within the Yemen state, or to take over what the original state is, the struggle for legitimacy is the real problem here. And that is the real issue and the major cause of war across the globe, struggle for legitimacy. So let's see how we can allow natural order to take its course so that people take power legitimately. And when those powers are acquired, they are also used responsibly for the good of all.
Before now, the militia group, you know, they've been holding people hostages, you know, holding the economy to ransom. But what we wonder, why will they have this kind of audacity, you know, to issue currency? What does that suggest to you about the sensitivity and the dimension this crisis is going in Yemen?
That is a point I have talked about earlier, why this conversation started, about the hypocrisy across the globe. You see, some of these people you call terrorists or you call militias, they are having backing from national governments across the world. And I think this is where the real issues are, because you see that once there's a crisis in a particular state or country, you see the world gravitating at both sides. Some are joining the power in place, some are joining the militias, and then, of course, you see again a bipolar arrangement coming together in that place. But like you said earlier, when the elephants fight, the grass pay the ultimate price. So this is the issue. So the audacity is not coming from within. The audacity is coming from those who are funded there from the outside, who are determined to destabilize Yemen for whatever reason they have in their heart, to ensure that nation no peace. But I also feel that the people of Yemen themselves should come to realization and look out for ways to see that, yes, the world may be supporting you from both sides to see that you conquer the other. But ultimately, it is the people of Yemen that are suffering, and it is that economy that is actually under stress.
Talking about the people of Yemen, at this point, what should be their role or responsibility? You have a legitimately recognized government, and you have, so to speak, a rebel government now issuing currency. What should be their role in accepting and using the currency?
Well, of course, definitely, there's no way, like I said, it's unthinkable for the militia to think that that currency will circulate. The official currency will still be circulating. They could be using that within themselves. How much they can trade with themselves is a different ballgame. And I think the printing is actually just symbolic of the fact that they have earned their freedom. To what extent they can use those currency to trade or the coin to trade is a different ballgame altogether. And that also will determine the extent of the territory to which they have control over. So if they don't have control over the entire Yambe state and the legitimate government still have control, those coins may not be used as, they may not qualify as legal tender, as it were. So it's just a demonstration of the fact to say that, yes, we are itching toward our independence. Now you are having a currency with a different coat of arms, and the rest of it is to see that the liberation struggle is going. So it's like saying no retreat, no surrender.
Thank you so much, Idahosa Osamhanze, for your time with us on the show today. We hope that you have a splendid Easter celebration. I have no doubt that has begun already, but we'll ask that you continue.
Thank you so very much, Blessing.
Early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.